Here's a full guide for the Manaforged Deadeye build I've been playing with my endgame gear. First, I'll show a map with Headhunter, and then I'll show one without it after, just to show you the difference. Since obviously I've been using a Headhunter. The build is fairly tanky for mapping. I wouldn't really recommend doing bosses on it. I mean, you definitely can. I'm gonna test some Ubers on stream soon. Not really sure when exactly, because I kind of want to keep the character and don't want to die. But if you want to do bosses, I'd probably recommend looking at a Sabo version, like Garata's version. Alright, well, that's a build with Headhunter. Not a juice map or anything, but gives you a good idea. Now I'll do a map without Headhunter. Now the benefit of not using a Headhunter is you can get more cooldown reduction with a belt like this. Just use that right there. Alright. Alright, so this might be a little rough actually, because this map has minus accuracy, so I'm not accuracy capped with that mod. So, we'll see. I should have done a Legion with the Headhunter for the Ultra Juice, but oh well. So you still definitely clear just fine without a Headhunter. And if you're gonna boss, you obviously aren't gonna use a Headhunter. No, I'll take the speed shine off because it's a little disingenuous. There you go. That was with 40% increased life and less accuracy, so I did way more damage than I was actually expecting without a Headhunter. I was expecting it to be pretty bad actually. But yeah. Not bad, pretty good. Alright. I'll show you the gear I have equipped right now. It's pretty good. This is my bow. It's about 1k DPS, maybe a little bit higher. So I have increased global damage, increased cost of skills. Now the increased cost of skills isn't necessarily ideal, but big game. Crit chance, Herald of Purity, well that's garbage, obviously I don't use that. This is the big one, increased cooldown recovery rate, 25. you're looking to get to 52 for the breakpoint, the main breakpoint. You can get 25 here, you can get 20 on a belt, you can get like 20 on boots, so there you go. That's how you reach the main breakpoint. The ideal bow is probably something like you get the juicy flat on your first node. Second node, you can get like base crit and either minus accuracy or ideally minus attack speed. I think what you actually want on the second node though is the mod that makes it so you have 20% reduced attack speed, since your attack speed doesn't really matter on this, and it gives you 20% chance for double damage. That's the ideal one. And then this one. You need this one. Or my helmet. I just have life, and I'm using a loathing essence on it to get mana reservation efficiency of skills. So I could fit all my things. Now, if you're trying to put together the build on a budget, don't worry about Hurl Device. It's literally, it does basically nothing, but I just like the explodies. It's not good. In a like real min-max version, like actually going try hard, you don't want to use this, but everybody likes explodey boom booms, so I'm using it. I have the helmet enchanted with Purity of Elements reservation, so I can fit in these auras. I'm using alls, so I can fit in anger. And then here's my quiver. It's got some flat damage, life, projectile speed, res. Ring, just a big fat res ring with life that I ashlinged onto it. And non-channeling skills have -4 to mana cost. I'll get to why it's -4, not -7 in a second. This one also just fat res on it, and I need an unset in order to fit another aura. Here are my gloves. Accuracy, expression, life. Yep, well, that's the belt that I'm using for mapping. Can't really beat that, but if you want to use a rare, it would look something like this. It would be a Shaper belt. I think Crusader can also roll it, but I believe it's better to roll on Shaper. You roll it for life and cooldown recovery and whatever else you need on it, basically. Boots, I just have life, expression, some res. And onslaught on kill. Chest piece is lightning coil. This is for the fizz reduction. You do not run determination on this build. See, the auras are only, there's no determination there, just grace. Have basically no armor. The reason we do this is because we convert a lot of the fizz damage we take into elemental damage. 13% on the helmet, can get it a little bit higher. I can get up to like 15 in total. 50 here, and then up to 15 here on your flask. So that's like 80% converted. And then you can also get Fizz to Fire on a Lethal Pride if you go that route with the tree. I'll get to that in a minute. So there's two main like trees, but I'll get to that in a second. And I'm also using Sinvictus for weapon swap. I forgot to do it in the map, but if you shoot your arrows and then swap to Sinvictus, the arrows will still be going, and you can get a Rampage proc if you really want to be sweaty. Rest of gear. Using this Watcher's Eye, non-channeling skills -7. It goes up to 10, but -7 is fine for what I need. And then crit multi while affected by anger, and I'm using Thread of Hope. It's really good here. This part of the tree is really good. A Lethal Pride here is also a really good option. And then Glorious Vanity with Corrupted Soul. And that is it for the gear. So your links. The setup I have is a 6-link with Inspiration socketed and a bunch of bow attacks. And then I have a second 6-link with another Manaforged and a bunch of bow attacks and with Inspiration. Purity Purity of Elements, Flame Dash, Grace, Herald of Ice. Like I said earlier, this is optional. Flame Wall, Link to Cast on Crit, and Sniper's Mark with your main. Let me rephrase that. Your main thing, which is Scourge Arrow, that's how you trigger all of the attacks, is with Scourge Arrow. I'll explain why Scourge Arrow in a second, but Scourge Arrow linked with Sniper's Mark, Flame Wall, and Cast on Crit, and this is a crit build. So you will get the Flame Wall every time you crit, and you also get Sniper's Mark every time you crit. It's pretty good. It saves you a link. Links are really, or sockets are really starved in this build, so you don't really have space for mark on hit. It also makes it way more expensive and don't have much of a mana pool, so having it only cost 28 mana, 1 link to cast on crit is a lot nicer, because if it's with a mark on hit sport, it becomes like 60. So why Scourge Arrow? The reason we use Scourge Arrow is because it is a channeling skill, and then we use these crafts. Non-channeling skills are minus to mana cost. So what it does is it makes all our Manaforged skills, it reduces their cost, but not the Scourge Arrow. Since the way Manaforged works is you have to reach 300% of the mana cost of the things it's linked to for it to trigger. And we're reducing the mana cost of them, so they should all be at like 1 or 0. See, they're all 0. Then Burning Arrow is at 1. This is important that you have at least one that costs mana though. And you need to get it to a point where it will trigger every time you use Scourge Arrow. So you need to pay attention to that. You need to make sure not all the skills are at 0, because if they're all at 0, then you won't trigger Inspiration. That's why I have -4 here and not -7, because if it was -7, they'd all be 0. So that way I still get Inspiration charges. You can also opt for a setup without Inspiration and use like increased crit damage, but I'm too lazy for that, and Inspiration's a pretty good support and it makes it easier, so I'm using Inspiration. That's also why I have the minus mana cost Clarity's Watcher's Eye here. You don't need this, it's just a nice QL. Yeah. I think that is about it. For the actual bow skills, it doesn't, I mean, you use most of them. I'd say honestly, just pick the ones you like. I'll point out the best ones. Anomalous Blast Rain, you're gonna want. This is really good. It covers enemies in Ash on hit, which means they take more fire damage and they move slower. And the attack that does the most damage is Burning Arrow. It has the highest attack damage and effectiveness of added damage. So Burning Arrow is your big pumper, so it gets even more buffed by that. Ideally, you'd have like a Anomalous Burning Arrow, I think. I'm not sure if it's Anomalous or one of the other qualities, but it'll increase the crit strike. But most of them are just fine on their own without a alt quality, but you can check each one. Personally, I'm too lazy and the build is good enough without them. But you can look that up if you want to. Yeah. And the build is taking use of Avenging Cascades, so you should try and use bow skills that can return to you. Obviously, Blast Rain can't, but it's good enough that what it gives you, that it doesn't matter. So you should try and get all the bow skills that will actually like return and go back and forth twice. So you shouldn't use things like Rain of Arrows, for example. Don't use Ensnaring Arrow. Ensnaring Arrow sounds really good, but Pierce and some other stuff messes it up and doesn't actually give you the bonuses it says it gives you. So yeah, stick to attacks that will go back and forth and you should be good, or you can just copy what I have and be good. Now, there is a few options for the direction you want to go with this build. I'll start with the version I've been doing, I guess. Let me just import my character. I opted to not use a cluster jewel because I thought it was good enough without one. And so I didn't bother. But you can go cluster jewel, and I'll show you a tree with the cluster jewel in a minute. And I will link all of these in the description, obviously. So this is my tree. This is what it looks like. Using Thread of Hope, that's the main difference between this one and the other version. This version uses Thread of Hope and uses an All's Amulet. The other version will be using Omni and going Lethal Pride. But you can see here with Thread of Hope, you hit like a ton of good nodes. You can even like boom, 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 boom. Right? Okay. Path down here for Corrupted Soul, and then you get some life and more evasion down here. I looked for a Glorious Vanity that has Fizz reduction on it because we're kind of low on Fizz reduction on this build. I mean, it's pretty good with Lightning Coil and all those other sources, but I can always use more. I'll show you the ascendancies here. I'd go Gathering Winds first, then second go Far Shot, then third go this, and then fourth go this. This makes you really tanky while mapping. I've been good with it on the entire character. So another thing to note is this build I helped Alira instead of killing all, but killing all is probably still better, especially if you're going to go cluster. But I found Alira is pretty good. It gives you 20 multi, 15 all elemental resistances, which are not super easy to come by on this build, which is also why I'm using Purity of Elements. In softcore, you probably don't have to worry about that, but in hardcore, I'd try and get like the 110 on all my resistances. It is a little bit difficult on this build. Not super difficult, but Alira makes it a lot nicer. So yeah, you can either decide to use it if you want to go the lazy route, or you can call for the non-lazy route and then get 2 extra points and put them somewhere. So Ghost Shrouds, obviously. Yeah. So the reason why things like Long Shot and Far Shot are good is because of Vengeance Cascade, and they go all the way to the end of their travel point, and then they return, so they really benefit from Far Shot. Yeah. Okay, I will show, let me save this. I'll show you the other version now. Or I guess I'll go to, did I just import? No, okay. I'll show you the cluster version. So here's the cluster version, it's a little bit different. Actually, I'm gonna, I don't know. Well, I don't really like cluster on this build, I'm gonna be real with you. This is also probably not the cluster you want, but it's okay. Ideally, you'd want a cluster with attack damage, I believe, and then just 35% increased effect, and then other good mods on it if you want to go that route. Then you use Enduring Composure one. I'll fix this and put it in the description, but I'm not a huge fan of this route. Here's what I think is probably the best option, especially like if you want damage. This is probably the best option. Going Omni and then using Lethal Pride here. Lethal Pride here is like actually insane. You have so many nodes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It's really crazy. You can get a lot of stuff here. And it shouldn't be too hard to even get this stuff because so many are good for the build. Percent increased strength, double damage. Percent increased strength, double damage. Fizzes fire, strength. Pretty much you're looking for strength, fizzes fire, double damage. Life is fine too. But yeah, really good. Makes it really easy to get your Omni up. You don't need a ton of Omni. but you get around like 1200. That's good enough. I'd say this is probably the version you want to go for softcore. Yeah, that is probably the version you want to go for softcore. It'll do the most bang for your buck. Yep, that's about it for the skill trees. One last thing that people usually ask, I guess, Pantheons, Lunaris, and Ralakash.